Hello, folks. I am Rebecca Adams. You're watching Free to Soar, and I have Becky Vermeer with me, who's always with me. And I have,
Hello.
yes, Mrs.
I forgot to
Doubtfire.
do that.
I know. We need to hear Mrs. Doubtfire. She makes us smile. And we have a special guest with us tonight. We have Meg, who is telling us her story, and it's just incredible. I'm the kind of person that I could always listen to personal stories, always. Um, and yours is just fascinating. I just can't get over everything you've been through, Meg. You're quite the survivor.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, absolutely. And we look forward to hearing more from you. Um, Becky, do you have a pair of socks you want to show us before we
I
go
do,
on?
as a matter of fact.
You do?
I do.
What do they look like?
So you know my buddy Dr. Seuss.
Oh yeah, I love
I
Dr.
didn't know if you
Seuss.
knew we were buddies or not.
Oh, that's another thing we have in common. You have fox in socks.
One fish,
One
two
fish,
fish, red fish, blue fish.
Oh, is that what that is? Sorry, I don't have
Yes.
my computer glasses on. How
Yes.
awesome!
Little stripey on the bottom, a
Ooh,
little fishy on the top.
I love it.
Can't get any better than that.
Nope, nope. I love it. I love that book.
I wish I had Fox and Socks. Fox and Socks is actually one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books. I love to read that book maybe more than any other book.
I love that one, and I love the alphabet.
Yeah,
Oh, I
that one
love
too.
that. I've
Yeah.
got parts of that memorized. I read that to my kids so many times.
Do
Love that book.
you have some earrings to show us tonight?
I do. These are some earrings that I made these. They actually came with that loop, and they had like tons of bling on them. Just didn't want all that bling. So I took them apart and I made like about at least 5, if not 7 pairs of earrings out of these.
Wow,
Yeah,
fancy.
I love the simplicity of them and just the one little fake diamond down there.
Simple elegance.
Yes, exactly.
That's
classic.
what I got.
Thank you. So where were we, Becky? Where were we going with Meg's story? Because
Well, we were finishing a story, and Meg used an expression that I would like her to talk to us a little bit about. And the expression that you used was reactive abuse. Would you like
Yeah.
to maybe define that for us? Tell us what that is?
So reactive abuse is something that you see a lot. One good example that most people know about, and I used this in the last episode, is Gabby Petito. That horrific case where you see the body cam footage where she's the one that's upset and she's the one that's being hysterical. And it looks like she is just being so unreasonable. But what people don't realize is that's something that's called reactive abuse. And what reactive abuse is almost exactly what it sounds like. You're reacting to the abuse, but it makes you look like you're the abuser. So what happens is abusive person is going to push your buttons, and they're going to know every single button because more than likely they're the ones that put the buttons there. They installed it. So they know what to do, and they're just going to push those buttons and push those buttons and push those buttons. They're going to just go after you about it. Like, did you do the dishes? Did you do the dishes? Well, really, because I don't see the dishes done. Well, then why are there dishes? No, there's dishes. Well, you didn't put them away, so they're not done. And it gets to the point, every day they do this, every day they do this, every day they do this. I'm just using the dishes as an example. Every day. And then it's going to get to the point where one day you're going to have it all done and you're just going to be like, really, you want these dishes done? And after maybe a year of this, however long it takes, somebody might get mad and, throw a fork or drop a plate. And they're going to say, why are you so crazy? Why can't you just do the dishes? And why can't you just do the dishes without acting insane? You're crazy. This is all you think I'm upset? Well, I'm upset because you're acting insane. Now, usually it's not dishes that they're doing.
right.
It's much bigger. So, if somebody's sitting there telling you what a horrible person you are and why aren't you this way, or why aren't you this way, or they're hitting you and they're hitting you and they're hitting you, you're eventually going to snap. No matter who you are, like, like I was saying in the other episode, when I first met my ex-husband, I was already broken. But eventually there was going to be that snap where you snap out of it. Now you might, and a lot of times I am very guilty of reactive abuse. My form of abuse is I have a mouth and I will use it, and I will say some of the most horrendously awful things that you could say to anybody. But that's because I can't physically hurt you. First of all, I'm only about 5'5", 5'6". I'm not that tall. And most of the people in my life, I mean, even my daughter's 5'9", 5'10". So, I mean, I'm shorter than everybody in my life. So I'm not going to be able to physically defend myself or physically, do anything. So my words, and, and they can cut because they need to. They need to cut as much as this person's going to hurt me. They're going to need to cut as much as this person's going to bruise me or put me into intensive care, because that's the only weapon I have is my words. And I'm going to snap, and I'm going to snap to the point where I'm going to say the most horrendous things. And I do remember the worst things I've ever said. And if you look at some of these big famous cases where they're like, well, they say they're not abusive, but look at these things that they're saying in these texts. If you go to some of the people I've been with that have been abusive to me, you would probably find some similar texts, because that's reactive abuse. Then they can take that text, or they can take that video of you, because they're going to film you and say, look at you. I want everybody to see how ridiculous you look right now. I'm going to film you. They can use that later. See how crazy she is? Or you're hysterical and they call the cops on you. See, she's the one being crazy. I'm sitting here calm as can be. And the place that hurts the most is in the courtroom.
Yes.
100% the place that hurts the most is in the courtroom, because women are already so fragile. I remember the one time I had to go to trial and lost for a protection order, I had 10 domestic violence advocates sitting behind me and the lawyer of the day sitting next to me, all ready to testify, all ready. And the judge was just a complete jerk, completely just blew it all off, said, because everything I said, my ex-husband refuted, his attorneys refuted, to the point where they're like, well, I can't believe anybody. And when he told me, like when he announced that I was not getting the protection order, I literally I was sitting in a chair, fell to the ground, hunched over, bawling my eyes out. Domestic violence advocates, attorneys looking at him thinking he's insane. But you know what I looked like? I looked like I was the insane one. And not even 2 weeks later, something happened and I had to go back in for that protection order again. But because his attorney was pushing and pushing and pushing, I couldn't think straight, and I would get things mixed up, or I would start to get emotional and cry. And that made me look weak. That made me look like I was lying. And I mean, and I thought I held it in compared to other people I've seen. I've seen people just hysterical. I've seen people just saying all the most crazy things because they're like, this is the only chance I get to tell anybody anything. And then they lose the case because they weren't able to keep it together. But then on the flip side, as we were saying before, if you keep it together too well and don't show emotion, then you're just making it up because you would have emotion. So it really doesn't matter either way at one point. But the reactive abuse is something that people use to, especially abusers, to weaponize their victims, to make them look like they're okay. They're the good person. Like my ex-husband looked like he was a saint. He was this perfect, godly Christian man raising these children on his own, when the ex-wife was insane. Because I was like, no, he's abusing my children. No, he's abusive to me. No, why do you think I have this protection order? No, no, no. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. To cops, to everybody else. I just looked crazy because he's like, I don't know what she's talking about. The gas, and one way that they push the buttons is gaslighting. And if you get gaslit too far, you're going to snap. And in that moment, they take that one moment of your weakness and they let the whole public eye see it. And then automatically, you're the crazy one. You're the abusive one.
The other thing that plays into that, especially if you're talking like in a courtroom setting or whatever else, that abuser is going to sit in that courtroom and be calm, cool, and you're going to say something, and the abuser may just look at you and say, I didn't say that, or shake their head and speak over to the attorney and I didn't say that or whatever else. And as the victim, you've endured this and you've endured this and you've endured this, that you go, yes, you did. You said that, and then you said this, and then you did that. But because you react like that, because of all of these things that you've been trying to hold inside, you might mess up the timeline. Well, that didn't happen 5 years ago. I can show you right here that happened 3 years ago. See, she's lying. And it's not that you're intentionally trying to lie at all, but you're traumatized. And when that trauma comes out, that trauma doesn't come out in this happened and then this happened and then 6 months later this happened. It doesn't come out like that. It comes out in all of these things that happened. And he sits there. I didn't say that. I didn't do that. And it just quietly, calmly pushes the buttons and pushes the buttons and pushes the buttons. That in that courtroom, I've seen just what you're saying. So many victims snap and they lose their cool or they raise their voice. And then the judge says, you can't speak like that in my courtroom. And all of a sudden it turns into your behavior is not acceptable for my courtroom, which is not anything to do with why the people are there to begin with.
Or then if you're anything like my ex-husband, he could cut me down, scare me, make me terrified of my life by a single look.
Yep.
And I would know that look, but nobody else would know that look. So he would give me the look, the deadpan, dead behind the eyes, like scathing into your soul, burning look, which would terrify me and throw me off on purpose. And you can't tell a judge, well, I'm like this because he looked at me.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But it's like,
The
unless
judge
you,
is going to say whatever.
right. And then like, unless you've actually seen that look, and my, ex-fiance who I lived with after him that put me in intensive care many times had that same look too. It's like, it's like almost, I call it the sociopathic look. And you can't just say, but he looked at me the wrong way. And then they're going to be like, okay,
Yeah.
like you're an adult. But I mean, and like he would weaponize everything. For example, if I can't tell you how many times I've had DHS called on me to try to prove that I'm a bad mother, to the point that there's notes in it saying, like, this woman is doing the best she can. Like, she has been given every obstacle and she is trying her best. Like, they've tried to say I'm an alcoholic because I had a full bar, but I was a wedding and event planner for like 20 years. Do you know how much I've been given as gifts? Like, my alcohol has dust on it, like literal dust. And they make jokes of it that they have to take pictures. And each time they see more dust. So, I'll say stuff like, he keeps calling DHS on me, like it's, doing this. And he'll be like, I don't know what she's talking about. I'm not the one doing it, but she's coming into my work harassing me when I'm not. But there's records of people calling DHS, but they're always anonymous. There's no records of people going into his work.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and then I have to try to defend myself. And then of course I'm going to get defensive. And then that's when I'm going to get emotional.
Right. And then you get looked down on for that. One of the tactics that I used when I was the court advocate, because prior to being the director of the program that I am now, I was the court advocate for a while, which means I went to court with people that were fine for actually come back for the full order, the whole thing. And I practiced the lean. I got really good at it because I would sit with the person who was the victim and you could see where the abuser was. And the second he would look in her direction, I would lean forward. or I would turn to the side like this, just to shield her view, so
Yeah,
she
I
didn't have
know
to
that
see him.
lean.
You know,
I
and
do
you
the
can't,
same thing.
there's not much you can do in court that the judge will let you get away with, but you sure can lean forward, you sure can lean backwards, or whatever. And so I teach that to new court advocates that I'm training, is you got to pay attention. Where's the abuser in relationship to the victim who's sitting here? And can you shield their view? And if you can, you should. Because that intimidation that you're talking about, nobody else will see. The judge won't see it, the bailiff won't see it, his attorney won't see it, nobody, your attorney won't see it, nobody else will see it. But
That's good.
it can shatter a person. Like, you can go into that courtroom with confidence. I can test and I say what I have to say, and then there's that look, and you're reduced back to a shell of the confidence that you had. And so there's a lot to be said for, you don't have to say a word to support somebody in that setting. Just keep the abuser's gaze away from them, and that really does help a lot.
Oh, that's good.
It can
I
make a
know.
difference.
Yeah, I know when I've gone into court with women, because I've been through it myself, you see that. And one thing I like to do is, as you said, the lean, and
Mhm,
I'll like do the lean and I'll whisper a joke,
mhm.
or I'll try to like break this, break it somehow,
Yeah.
to be like, not only can he not affect you, because my favorite thing, I tell everybody, especially my children, this, there's only one way you can get revenge on somebody, and that's to live a good life. That's to live your best life, no matter what they try to put in your way. You
Yeah.
want to get back at somebody, succeed no matter how hard they try to make you fail. So, not only are you breaking that gaze, you make them laugh a little. That's going to infuriate the guy.
Mhm.
They're going to be like, how dare you enjoy yourself?
Right. And we're laughing at you. That's what you want him to think. We're
Exactly.
laughing at you. So you can laugh
And that's
all
usually
you
what it
want.
is.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
make some joke about their clothes or their style or
Mhm.
something, just to kind of break the habit, or like make fun of their attorney in some way. For example, my ex-husband's attorney, I used to call him the walrus, because he was kind of short, stocky, with a big white handlebar mustache. So I would call him the walrus. And, for example, the walrus would come and if I was sitting on the edge of an aisle, he would come and he would like block me and try to talk to me, to the point where bailiffs would have to like have him removed. He would do everything to try to intimidate me and scare me. And then when he would feel like he had the upper hand, he was so calm and relaxed, and he would try to be my best friend. So I always knew when he was scared by how he treated me.
Yeah.
One time he was so confident in winning that he was flirting with, this was when I had an attorney. Every now and then I'd get an attorney for the day, but he was so confident in winning, he was flirting with my attorney of the day. The guy was probably like 65, 70. She was probably about 40. He's putting his arm around her, flirting with her and everything. One of her interns is sitting next to me cracking up, and she's like, he does realize he's not getting anywhere with her, right? And I'm like, he better. She was a lesbian. And he
He's really barking up the wrong tree on that one then.
like, trying to smooth her over. And it's like,
That is funny.
you're so scared. You're trying to like disarm her by charming her. First of all, you're not going to win her over, like, even if she wasn't. But I mean, that's what they do. They try to pull every trick in the book. So if you
Mhm.
start pulling them back, even if it's just making them smile, making them laugh, you can start seeing little cracks in their foundation.
Yeah.
And it's better, instead of getting the reactive abuse, try to be a little happier, healthier, and you'll start seeing the cracks in theirs, and you'll start seeing their true color. Now, if you go by yourself and you don't have an advocate, or you don't have a friend, or you don't have an attorney, it's hard, no matter what. I can't tell you how many times I have been into court for just myself. Like, our files is probably in boxes, just for me and my family. And it still gets scary. It's like, is he going to show? I never know if he's going to show up. He loves to play like, avoid getting served, so I have to go to court 10 times game. And I still get nervous. I don't know if he's going to show. I don't know if he's not. I don't know if he got served. I don't know if he has an attorney. And that's another thing they do on purpose to disarm you. Because then if they do show up, you're already on pins and needles. And all they have to do is give you one look and you're done.
Yeah.
And they know that.
Yeah. It's such a good idea to have a support person. I always say over the years, I've thought of 2 good reasons to go to court, just 2. Other than those 2, I can't come up with any good reason to go to court, to be honest with you. And the 2 reasons I've come up with, if you're adopting a child, that's a happy go to court day.
Mhm.
If you're choosing to get married in court, that's a happy go to court day. Other than that,
Yeah.
everything else that you have to go to court for is not a happy go to court day.
Mhm.
And so to go by yourself ever, I don't care what it is, I think it's a bad idea. You should always have a trusted someone. If you don't have a family member or a friend, call the shelter and find an advocate. An advocate will always go with you, whatever that happens to be. But going into court by yourself is just as bad as I think going to the doctor by yourself is bad too, for
Mhm.
other reasons, but you should always have a trusted person with you. It's
Mm-hmm.
scary, it's intimidating.
For
And the
over
other
a
thing
decade,
is you
I've
don't know
had to
what's gonna
go.
happen.
For over a decade, I've had to go by myself. I never could afford an attorney. I've tried to ask for money to borrow money for a retainer, anything from family, nothing. One time I did have one from like the legal aid and she made everything so much worse. But I got to the point where I was going by myself so often, but the domestic violence, agency and they were the same agency that was in the same, like when I lived in the domestic violence shelter, they, ran it, but they've always been there in the back, they're always like in the back. If you need somebody, they're there, the announcements that they do. And so it kind of gets to the point, they see my name, they come up to me, they ask me, do I need anything? And it's to the point that I mean, at this point I don't, but I'm like, nope, this time I don't. Or sometimes they'll be like, this time I do. Or every now and then, if something upsets me and they can tell that the judge upset me, I'll like just leave, kind of like, walk off, and somebody will follow me and be like, are you sure you're okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. But I still, even though I'm there by myself, I still have that support.
Mhm.
Like they know I've got it covered. They know like I do this for, on the daily. Because if they see me in court, they know that it's because I'm there with somebody. So if they see my name, like they know, okay, like it's time for this. Because at one point I had 3 different protection orders because we had 3 different people on 3 different schedules. So, or like it's just been a mess doing it all. So it's to the point where they're just like, do you need me? Nope. Okay. Are you sure at the end? Like, are you sure you don't need me? Yeah, I'm good. Okay. But it's good to know that they're there. It's good to know that they're there, that when the push comes to shove, I'm not going to be alone. Because like I said, the time I had to go to trial where I had lost the trial, they all, at the end of the day, they all stayed and waited. Like, for some reason, there was 10. There's not normally that many. And they all came to my trial and sat behind me. And even though I lost, and they, like everybody, there was a gasp, like, how dare you? But they knew that judge was, and that's why they knew that they wanted to go to trial, because they knew that judge. And they knew that judge was going to make it impossible.
Yeah.
And, now it's to the point where I think it's going to be almost impossible for me not to get one. But then you have things in the state of Maine. I know somebody that has, in the state of Maine, the normal protection order is 2 years. You can get it from 6 months to 2 years usually. The average is 2 years or a year. The last time I got mine renewed, they did it for 3 years, which I was shocked. And that's because it would have made it so like all the kids would have been out of school and everything. So that would give me a choice. Do I want to do it and everything? So I was a little shocked. But I know somebody that has a multi-decade protection order. And the state still says it's a gray area. We can't arrest when things come up.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And I've seen this more times than you can imagine in more than one state. And that's something we really need to work on. There should be no gray area. There should be
I
no,
agree.
Right.
because they're like, oh, a boat on in the state of Maine. I know every state is like written out differently. There's a proverbial line, and there's an actual line, but it's also a line in the sand where everything above that line is criminal, everything below that line is civil. So when they do anything below that line, the police are like, oh, sorry, it's a civil matter. We can't do it. Or I know like there's at times like my ex-husband could email me if it was about the kids and it had to be like, in a certain thing. And then when I would go and show them these emails had nothing to do with the kids that were abusive. Oh, well, that's a gray area because he's allowed to email you about the kids, but this isn't about the kids. And these are just some of the smaller things that have happened. And when you deal with these law enforcement officers and you deal with these judges and you deal with these attorneys and you realize they don't have your back, you're not going to trust them. So when you go to court and the judge is telling you, well, you need to trust me, how can somebody
Why
trust you
would you? Yeah.
when these things are continuously being broken?
Mhm.
And of course, when they tell you that, whatever, you're going to get emotional and you're not going to trust these people. And when you don't trust people, you're going to break down. And that's when the emotional abuse starts again.
Mhm.
And that's when the emotional abuse starts, the gaslighting starts, and you react and you get the reactive abuse and you lose your case.
Did he ever get arrested for violating an order of protection? Ever one
No.
time?
Not once.
Did he ever get a reprimand of any kind?
The only time he's ever gotten reprimanded was he got twice like charged and found guilty of contempt of court, but both times no sanctions because they thought that would be enough. Now, one thing that people say a lot, you'll hear a lot, is hurt people hurt people. Yeah, that's true, but I don't really believe it. Just like, oh, you can't blame the alcohol. I used to, like, with my ex-fiance, would blame the alcohol. Oh, he only did it when he was drunk. And then I had a doctor tell me, how many times have you been drunk in your life? Have you ever hit anybody?
Mhm.
You can't blame mental illness either. How many times have people with schizophrenia not hit anybody?
Right.
It's not, and I had a therapist, and when she told me this, it like hit it right on the nail on the head. It's not hurt people hurt people. It's you do what you think you can get away with. So if we do not actually make them have sanctions, if we just say, oh, no sanctions, or oh, that's a gray area, we let them look at their victims in court in these aggressive ways to scare them into not testifying or to scare them into reacting, they're going to get away with it. The more you get away with something, the more you think you're going to be able to, and the more you're going to hurt people. You only do what you think you can get away with. So by allowing this, you're allowing domestic violence.
100%. I agree with you 100%.
By not charging somebody, you are saying you are allowed to abuse that person.
Mhm.
We give you permission.
Yeah.
That person is your property.
I've heard judges say, well, it's not bad enough. You're right. They violated the order, but it's technically not bad enough to do anything about. And so then the response is always, so what is bad enough?
Thank
So
you.
she has to be hospitalized and then you'll enforce the order. She has to be killed and then you'll enforce the order. I will never forget for as long as I live. My very first, in the first couple of months, like I'm a brand new court advocate, and where I was working with a resident who told me, my husband is going to burn down my house. We went to court to get an order of protection because he was threatening her and threatening to burn down the house. And the judge said, he's not going to burn down your house. Within 24 hours, I get a phone call on our crisis hotline from her saying my house is on fire. He didn't believe her because it was the same scenario you're talking about. Well, it wasn't bad enough to arrest him.
Yeah.
He's going to get away with it. So what does he do? He went and burned her house down.
I told everybody he's going to take my children.
Mhm.
He's going to take my children. And, even a couple of years ago, I remember talking to my mother. I was like, he always said he was going to take them. He was going to say I was crazy because he still thinks I'm his wife because he has these weird, even though he's like remarried now, I'm always going to be his wife because I'm his property because, God told him. But I was like, he's going to take my children. He told her, and she's like, oh, your father used to say the same thing to me. I was like, yes, but he actually did it. My father never, kidnapped us or anything. He actually did it.
Mhm.
And he told everybody, like, so my kids still to this day have a hard time trusting me because they don't know, what their father said and everything else. And, their whole childhood was a lie. And what do you believe? And who do you believe? And it's, they have a hard relationship with each other and with everybody else. And all because, you know, it comes down to if I'd had that support as a child, if I'd had that healthiness instead of parents that pit each other, pit their kids against each other. And, one of my mother's famous lines, which I don't think she even realizes how unhealthy it is. Oh, I have 4 only children.
Yeah.
They all just think they're an only child. No, it's like, no, because when you make your home life so insecure and so unsafe as a child, you're never going to have that safety and you're going to cling to it. And you're going to get to the point where if you don't have anything to stand for, you're going to fall for everything. You're going to fall for every line. You're going to fall for every lie. You're going to fall for everything. And this person's going to be able to make it so they're God in your life, that they are the ones that like control everything. And even to this day, I mean, my ex-husband could probably give me that same look and I would be terrified to this day, even though I've been divorced for 10 years. And not many people have seen it, but the people that see it and have seen it and say it, they're like, oh, we know what you're talking about. Because it's that, and then that can just cause you to go into a panic. And when you're in a courtroom, we go back to exactly what we've been talking about.
Right. Right.
So it's a hard balance to figure out. And what we really need are more judges that are really trained in domestic violence and not trained in whatever background they have.
Exactly.
Becky and I
Because
have
you try
talked
to
a
do
lot
the
about
right
that.
thing. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, Becky and I have talked a lot about that, about how the judges and the DFS and all that, they need training on
Mhm.
what it really entails to be a victim of domestic violence. Go ahead,
And they
Becky. I'm sorry.
especially need the, reactive abuse training.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you try to do the right thing and you try to remove yourself from the abuser and you try to get the criminal justice system or the civil justice system to be on your side and to give you those legal remedies that are supposed to be in place. And you try to trust those things. And then right before your eyes, it plays out. I can't even trust the people that I'm supposed to be able to trust to help me in that. And so you're coming from a relationship where there's no trust. In your scenario, being raised in a home environment where there's no trust, you're looking for safety, you're looking for security. You call the police, you go to the judge, you hire the attorney looking for safety and security, but when it's all said and done, they're not doing it either. And so it's so easy as a victim in that scenario to walk away and think to yourself, well, that abuser of mine really is above the law because I'm
Mhm.
doing everything right. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm trying to stay away. The one's refusing to let me stay away from him, and the court system's not doing anything. And so that's why 10 years later, you're trying to heal yourself, you're trying to remove yourself, you're trying to be the best version of you, but all these systems have let you down so that he can still make a face and reduce you right back to that place, and that's not fair.
Right.
Somebody in that system should have came along and stopped it so you don't have to keep living like that. And you
Mhm.
were let down.
And then people say, if it was so bad, why isn't he in jail?
Exactly.
And
And it
then you
wasn't that bad.
and almost every person I've been with in the past, abusive or not, are in relationships right now. So it's like maybe you hear maybe you're the problem.
Mhm.
But again, I had a therapist who said something incredibly insightful one time. And they were like, the reason these people jump back into relationships is because you have made them realize how great having a relationship can be, how great having somebody to do stuff for you is. You made relationships look so appealing to them that of course they're going to want another one. Now, on the other hand, they made relationships seem like torture and hell to you. So why would you want to go back?
Mhm.
Why would you want that? And that's something you hear in court, like, oh, well, this person who's supposedly abusive is now remarried with kids and they're upstanding citizens. And, you're still here trying to say how horrible they are. It's because you made their life so easy that they want to keep it easy, and they made your life so miserable. Why would you want to go back to it?
And who's not to say they're not being abusive in their current relationship, but the current
Exactly.
partner hasn't had the ability to remove themselves from the situation or try to escape or try to get away. And so the public person and the private person are two different people. So in the public, he still looks like a great guy, but for me privately, I mean, that's where that
Exactly.
has to come right back into it. Go ask his wife behind closed doors,
Mhm.
is he really that great of a guy? Because
And it
no,
goes,
abusers don't change their spots quickly or ever.
of course, there's
In
going to
some
be a honeymoon
scenarios.
phase where, oh, she's crazy.
Mhm.
And when I meet somebody and they tell me that they have a crazy ex, my first response, my first reaction is, and I don't say this out loud, I say it to myself, what did you do to make them crazy?
Yeah, red flag. It's a red flag. Big time.
Mhm.
Or if they have 2 or 3 crazy exes,
It's
the
a
flag
pattern.
is bigger.
And then the funny thing is, you say that, and then it's like, I've had people say, well, what about you? You've had all these crazy exes too. But it's like, it's a difference. I don't say like, I don't come out and say, oh, my ex is crazy. I was like, no, my ex was abusive.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You
Big
know,
difference.
Big
uh,
difference.
I have one ex who does have some diagnoses that I didn't know about until after we were together for a while. And, I can be like, well, this person's diagnosed, da, 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 da. But there's a big difference between being abused and being crazy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And usually when I hear the word crazy, that word is the red flag.
Mhm.
Not, oh, I've been in some toxic relationships. If somebody comes to me and it's like, oh, that relationship was just toxic all around. And I've been in some toxic relationships. I've worked on myself. I'm starting to realize my patterns. That sounds like, somebody who's trying to evolve. But when
Mhm.
they just say, oh, all my exes are crazy, it takes no responsibility on yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's usually a big red flag right there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember the last person I gave a second chance to. I went on a couple dates after he said that his ex was crazy and told me some crazy things about his ex and all this other stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll just give it another chance. I ended up ending things with him because I remember telling him that he hurt my feelings because I told him something. I can't remember what it was, but something, it was a professional thing that was kind of like a disappointment or something. And I didn't get any sympathy. I didn't get a couple days later, well, how are you feeling? What's going on? And I was like, I listen to you and I listen to your problems all the time. I know way too much about your life because you overshare, and the one time I come to you with something, I don't get any sympathy, you just kind of ignore it. And that kind of hurt my feelings. And you think that, like, some people, they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. No, instead, they just kind of went off on me, blocked me 3 times within an hour, like, just completely like everything was my fault, everything else. I'm like, and you wonder why you don't have a relationship right now. You like, it's like all your exes are crazy. It seems to me you have a lot of growing up and mature. I didn't say any of this. I'm just like, bye, walk away. But you think to
Right.
yourself, like, that red flag should have been. I've never ignored that red flag since that.
Very good.
It was the last time I ignored it because it's like, okay, I'll just give this one more chance. No, I mean, it's all because I was like, I'm a little insulted you didn't check in on me, or I'm a little insulted I didn't get any sympathy. And it's like, they flip out and it's like, that's a good sign that if that's how they react, that's not who I want in my life. So
Right.
when I hear the word crazy come out of somebody's mouth, like that person, like it's like my ex is crazy, it's like that's the red flag right there.
Mhm.
Now if I hear like, yeah, we had a toxic relationship and it just didn't work out, that you're taking responsibility. It goes both ways. But if you are labeling, it means that you don't have enough maturity to actually have any introspective of yourself and realize that you can be to blame at all.
Mhm.
And as an adult, that is the most unhealthy thing that you can do.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Well, ladies, we have finished another episode. Can you believe it?
Wow.
It goes
We're
so
busy.
fast.
It
What's that?
does.
What'd you say, Becky?
I said, we're busy.
Yes, we are. It just goes so fast every single time. It always amazes me. Well, folks, I want to show you the international signal for help. You could be in a foreign country and you don't even speak the language. But if you see somebody doing this, they're asking for help. So you can either help them, or if you need help, you can flash this signal. And it doesn't matter how many times they show it over and over again, or just once, you know what that symbol means, what that hand signal means. So we like to make sure that we spread the news about that and tell everybody what that means. So just remember that no matter where you are in this process, you're always free to soar.